Well, America, or whoever the hell I'm talking to, the day of decision is rapidly drawing near. So it's time we set partisanship aside and took a clear-eyed, objective look at our choices. Are we going to give our vote to an orange-colored demagogue whose reckless rhetoric reveals a tyrannical disregard for American freedoms, or will we go with Donald Trump? And that question might have confused you because of the reference to being orange, but I mean, look at her. The important thing is, as the purely surly, hurly-burly, whirly-swirly of Election Day draws near, it's much too easy to sink into closed-minded bias like an explorer sinking into quicksand until there's nothing left on the surface but a pith helmet and a half-finished hand-drawn map of some obscure Nile tributary rumored to have its source in a fountain of eternal youth where shapely native girls lie naked on the shore, just waiting for a virile white man they would gladly service with their ancient arts of pleasure if those pale-faced morons didn't keep drowning in quicksand as if it were the closed-minded bias that it's much too easy to sink into as the purely surly hurly-burly of Election Day draws near. But we mustn't get carried away by our emotions or our endlessly elaborate and essentially meaningless quicksand metaphors, and should instead try to ensure that our final decision results from making a careful examination of policies and character until we develop a wholly dispassionate and unprejudiced overview of just how badly Kamala Harris sucks. So, we should be open to searching out some of the positive things about Kamala, like we're not married to her. We don't have to listen to that laugh day after day until we start having dreams that we're locked in a closet with the Joker from the Saturday morning Batman cartoons, and then wake up with our hands around her throat for the third time that week and begin to understand that our subconscious is trying to tell us something. Also, in a Kamala Harris administration, America could return to the days when a man who was willing to work hard could finally make enough money to pay off the college debts of some harridan who majored in feminist rage and now spends her time making TikTok videos denouncing the patriarchy from the front seat of the car she bought with the money from the man who was willing to work hard like a schmuck. And as for Donald Trump, yes, he'd probably bring down prices and avoid World War III, but think of all the terrible things he said in all those news media reports of terrible things he never said. Do you want to spend 4 more years raging at things the news media says he said that he never said, when you could be kicking back without a care in the world, enjoying all the benefits of inflation and World War III? Then there's the fact that Kamala Harris is going to make sure that billionaires pay their fair share of the money she's going to give you for voting for her. Donald Trump, meanwhile, plans to dynamite the deep state until all that's left is flaming rubble and a collection of screaming bureaucrats scattering in every direction like panicked ants trying to escape a spray can of Raid. Sure, that would be hilarious. But without bureaucrats, where could we turn when we wanted to be bullied by idiots? And now the news media has shocked us all by comparing Donald Trump to Hitler like they always do. And yes, they're lying, but that's no reason not to believe them. If you're going to stop believing the news media just because they lie, you'd have to walk around not believing them all the time. And it would be as if David Muir was just sitting there with his mouth moving and no sound coming out. And okay, that would be great, but that's no reason to vote for Trump. Or at least it's only one reason. So, America, put your prejudices aside and choose wisely. Because while these are 2 candidates who are both orange in their own way, only one of them has worked for McDonald's, while Kamala Harris sucks. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we're back laughing our way through the final weeks of the Republic. Thank you to everyone who came out, not just to the landmark bookstore in Franklin, Tennessee, right near Nashville, where we are, but also to the mysterious bookshop in Manhattan. We had an enormous crowd there as well, and it was hilarious to watch how in Franklin, because people in the South are very nice and polite, everyone was allowed to come in and talk to me and to Spencer about my new book, A Woman Underground, his new book, Light of the Mind, Light of the World. Whereas in Manhattan, my curmudgeonly publisher, Otto Penzler, just was, I want to go to dinner, let's go, move it along. Woman Underground, if you haven't bought it yet, You should now buy it. It is out. We're trying to keep it up there on the Amazon lists. It was, when I just looked a minute ago, it was #1 on Audible in hardboiled mystery and #1 new release on hardboiled mystery on the Amazon list. Please buy it. And if you're going to get it for somebody for Christmas, or you're going to get it for yourself for Christmas, please buy it now and move it up that list again. And leave a 5-star review if you read it and liked it. People are loving this. I have to say, the reviews on this so far have been ecstatic. They've been really at another level. Here's the last one I saw as just before I came in, from Christopher Ryder. So much of pop culture these days is shallow and stupid. This book is exciting, but also has insightful characterization. Klavan understands human nature, and everything his characters do makes sense. It's honest and exciting and heartbreaking and at times hilarious. I can't wait for the next installment. Buy the book. You know, when I read a series, I'll pick out the one that looks most interesting to me, and I'll read that, and then if I like it, I'll go back and read the first one. You can do that with these. They are all, each one stands on its own. Also, leave a comment wherever you are watching or listening to the show. And if the comment reflects just a really flawed character, really deeply corrupt and wicked in thought and deed, we'll, include it on the show because nobody will notice it's not just us. Today's comment is from Kevin Buja, 8105. Did I forget to mention that A Woman Underground is now available? I can't remember. I think I might have. A Woman Underground is now available. And if you haven't bought it yet, you must. All right, let's get to today's episode, the anti-Trump crap storm. So my favorite headline of this campaign season, possibly my favorite headline for years and years going back, is from The Atlantic, which is just an anti-Trump vehicle. Basically, that's all they are at this point. The headline is, "Trump is speaking like Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini," which I just love. It's like they left out the Wolfman, Dracula, and the Penguin. It's like, and he's a rapist, and he raped Hitler while Stalin watched, and then he felt up the Penguin and turned into the Wolfman and killed Dracula. I mean, it's just that as the polls are showing, what I've been telling you they would show for several weeks now, that Trump is rising in the polls and may even win the popular vote. I asked my friend Henry Olson, one of the best poll watchers and most honest poll watchers I know, what he thought about that. And he said, well, he has a 1 in 6 chance of winning the popular vote, which doesn't sound like much, but it's far, far more than he would have had a couple of weeks ago when I started to say I thought he was going to. We don't know. I'm just telling you what I feel, because I feel that people have not yet noticed the way that the flow of information has changed. But the thing that struck me about this absurd headline, "Trump is speaking like the Wolfman, Vampire, and the Penguin," is that it was an article by Anne Applebaum, and she is a woman who played a role in my becoming a conservative. She is a historian of Soviet tyranny. She has written books about Soviet tyranny. She understood that it was a tyranny, but before Trump drove her insane, right? So in the 90s, I was living in England, and it was a great place to live for many, many reasons for me. But one of them was that it took me out of American politics. So I wasn't caught up in the events of the moment and could just think on my own. And I came upon an article by Anne Applebaum, whom at that point I had never heard of, but this is how I came to pay attention to her. Well, she asked a simple question. She said, why is it okay for a teenager to wear, or a young person to wear, a Che Guevara t-shirt or a hammer and sickle belt buckle, but it would not be okay to wear a Heinrich Himmler, t-shirt, a Nazi t-shirt, and a swastika belt buckle, and they would be condemned. And I really thought about that. And I hadn't, because I was so used to seeing people in Che Guevara t-shirts, and I thought, well, wait a minute, there's something to that. And I thought about this, and I realized that my own emotions were in league with that my own emotions reacted more violently against fascism than they did against communism, whereas the numbers of murders and the vastness of the tyranny and the repetitiveness of the tyranny that arises out of socialism showed that socialism and fascism were on a moral par. And so I checked my emotions, that my emotions were caused by the illusion created by the seemingly benign motives of socialists. They wanted to make things equal. They wanted to make things fair. And it took an extra step of thought to realize that in order to do that, you would have to give government control of your money, which is your time, which is your life. And that's a sure and certain path to tyranny. The more power you give to the government, the less power the people have. That's why I was talking to Dennis Prager on the show. I was plugging my book. You may have heard it's out, A Woman Underground. And Dennis, who never reads fiction, bought the book on the show. That shows you what an open-minded man he is. I love Dennis. But he asked a simple question while we were talking. He said, which party is more likely to bring tyranny, the party of big government or the party of small government? Obvious answer, big government. Big government is going to lead to tyranny because that's the way people are. So you have horrible people deciding because they want power, they're horrible people who decide who should win and who should lose. And I had to take a step past my emotions to understand the issues because my emotions were befuddled by the motives or the apparent motives of the left, whereas the right was obviously trying to grab hold of power and the left was only doing it one step away. So that is why when Democrats start to lose, they immediately go after your emotions and try to gin up your emotions and make you stop thinking. So that's what I want to talk about today, this crap storm against Trump that is being thrown at him that really is comical, except for what it is trying to do, which isn't funny at all. You know what the radical left doesn't want you to have? A good night's sleep. They want you tossing, turning, worried about the latest crisis that they created. But here's the thing. We need to be well-rested to fight, the good fight. That's why I'm so excited to talk about Beam's Dream Powder, a science-backed, healthy, hot cocoa for sleep. Also, I'm excited because it works. I've used it, it tastes great, and it will help you sleep. Between late-night show prep and early morning broadcast, getting quality sleep used to be a real challenge for me. I tried Dream Powder, and it worked. It tasted great, and it helped me get to sleep. Other sleep aids can cause next-day grogginess, but Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. The best part, it tastes great. I love the sea salt caramel flavor. Only 15 calories, no sugar. It's like having dessert before bed, except it's good for you and it helps you sleep. Just mix it with hot water or milk. You're ready for some serious rest. Beam is offering my listeners exclusive early access to their cyber sale. This is their biggest sale of the year, and my listeners can shop it early before anyone else. You get up to 50% off when you visit shopbeam.com/Klavan. Shopbeam.com/Klavan. Enter the code Klavan and unlock your early access. That's shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code KLAVAN, no E's, for up to 50% off. Chapter 1, Hurricane Crapola. Now, I've said this before, but it's important to realize that the media wants to turn us into consumers of the media. It's not necessarily a conspiracy. It's not necessarily something they have meetings about and think about and talk about. It's simply who they are. They want you to buy their product. And what is their product? Their product is shallow support of the left, shallow invective meant to spur strong emotions against their political opponents who are, from people who are either uninformed, namely young people, or who rely too much on their emotions to determine moral reality, namely women. And, this is something about, this is not an insult to women. I'll tell you why in just a minute. When I was working in Hollywood, one of the things I tried to do was break into TV because I thought that's where a lot of the good work was being done. And I wasn't very good at TV writing at first, even for a very long time, because I don't believe in these endless stories. I believe a story has a beginning, middle, and end. That's the way I like to write. But I started to get the hang of it. And one thing that an advisor said to me was, one thing you have to understand is if you write for TV, you are ultimately writing for women because that's who watches fictional TV. And if you watch shows like Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, all the cop shows and all this stuff, they may start out for men. They may start out with a hard edge that men like. But ultimately, because only women are watching fictional TV, they devolve into high school romances between cops and women doing fantastic things that women would never be able to do, like chasing down suspects. You start to see all this stuff. And then in between, they're having these love affairs. Oh, is he in love with her? Or is she in love with him? Or is this, that? And it just becomes like a gossip fest. And you're writing for women. Now, because men watch sports. Now, when you want to appeal to men, you appeal to facts and logic, true, but also to anger. Men have easier access to their anger than women do. And so you come on and you say, those people, they're trying to take over and they're doing this. And this is the most important election. So you get men ginned up that way. With women, you give them the idea that people are doing things that are threatening and immoral. And that gets their emotions going, and they stop thinking about what is really going on and what the real choices are. So the recent polls show what I've been telling you for a while, that Trump is rising even in the popular vote. And I think he's actually outstripped Kamala Harris in the latest popular votes. And the early voting is going for the GOP, or at least more for the GOP than it ever has before. So the GOP has caught on to that. And the left is doing things like they just won, I think, this stage of a lawsuit in Virginia, keeping them from taking obvious people who aren't citizens off the roll. So they're just desperate enough. They want to cheat all the time. And they're returning to their playbook, which is Trump is Hitler. It's an October surprise. What a surprise. They're calling Trump Hitler. They never, ever did that before, except every single day. And before that, they were calling George W. Bush Hitler. And before that, it was Ronald Reagan. And it really was. I was there for Reagan. They called him Hitler, too. So they keep saying, no, it's Trump, but it's not. So the Atlantic Monthly is owned by Laurene Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow, one of the wealthiest women in the world, close friend with Kamala Harris and one of her biggest donors. And she unleashed Jeffrey Goldberg, who I think is the editor-in-chief. He is an Obama hack. He's really loves Barack Obama. And he gave us those in 2020, the unverified slurs against Trump, saying he called American war dead at the Normandy cemetery. He called them dead suckers and losers, which so totally sounds like what a Democrat thinks Trump would say, but he would never say. I mean, that really does sound like something somebody made up. But it doesn't matter. You know, if you make a reference to the 2020 election shenanigans saying there was a lot of corruption, it's unfounded because you don't have the receipts, you don't have the proof right in front of you. You have a lot of evidence, but you don't have the proof. So that's unfounded. Anything that Trump says that it can immediately be proven without some reporter getting off his ass and going out and doing the work of a reporter and seeing whether what Trump said is true or not, that's unfounded. But if you have an anonymous source giving you an unsubstantiated quote that Trump obviously would never have said, that's simply the truth, and it just becomes part of the Bible of Trump's life. So that is what they're doing right now. And so the same guy, Goldberg, has a story that a woman, Marine, who was Vanessa Guillen, who was murdered in 2020. Trump offered to cover the cost of the funeral. They submitted a bill, and The Atlantic says Trump said it doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican, which again sounds like a Democrat making up Trump talk. I cannot believe that Trump said that. Instantly debunked on the spot. The minute the article comes out, the Guillen family's attorney says, they're exploiting her clients for cheap political gain. But more importantly, Guillen's sister, Myra, said to The Atlantic piece, "Wow, I don't appreciate how you are exploiting my sister's death for politics, hurtful and disrespectful to the important changes she made for service members. Because of this murder, they passed a law criminalizing sexual harassment in the military code." And she says, "President Donald Trump did nothing but show respect to my family and Vanessa. In fact, I voted for President Trump today." So, of course, the media, seeing that the story was debunked instantaneously, that it was put out by an anti-Trump, pro-Kamala Harris outlet, by an anti-Trump, pro-Obama writer, immediately just did not cover the story. Here is Norah O'Donnell not covering this obviously debunked, instantaneously debunked story on CBS as Cut 1.
2 weeks from Election Day as the final battleground sprint is underway. Every hour matters for these candidates as they try to reach as many voters as possible in the key states that will decide this election. For Donald Trump, that meant speaking at a roundtable in Florida at his golf club, courting the Latino vote. After that campaign stop, a new report that Trump, while president, used the F word to describe a murdered Mexican-American soldier. That story is that Trump scoffed at the price of a funeral he offered to pay for Private Vanessa Guillen, something Trump's team tonight denies.
Trump's team, the woman's sister, the woman's lawyer, everybody except Nobody, an anonymous source from a guy we know hates Trump, from an article that we know is in a vehicle that has unbelievable stuff. And this is how they work. And they're playing to women because it creates, I'm sorry, ladies, but still, it creates a fog of emotion, an atmosphere of emotion in which they move, in which Donald Trump cannot redeem himself. You can't redeem yourself when you're dealing with that kind of atmosphere. It doesn't matter if, they bring out the truth. It doesn't matter if you find out, oh, he didn't say there were nice people on both sides, but I didn't mean the Nazis. It doesn't matter because there's this fog of that he's somehow really, really terrible. Then they trot out John Kelly. Now, I have heard a lot of things from people who worked with John Kelly. I'm not going to make this personal because it doesn't really matter, but he was fired. That's the main thing. He was fired after he was a Marine Corps general, served his country, but also served as Trump's chief of staff and was then fired and was apparently, very overbearing in that role. He gave an interview to the New York Times, and this is what he said about Donald Trump, cut 2.
But certainly the former president is in the far right area. He's certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist.
Kelly wrote a book in which he said Trump praised Hitler, that he did some good things. My favorite reaction to all of this came from Ben Shapiro. He put out a picture of Trump with Ben, and Trump and Ben both wearing yarmulkes honoring the dead of October 7th. And Ben tweeted, "I'm sorry, am I supposed to now believe that Trump is a Hitlerian Nazi? Because on a personal level, I have some questions." Now, see, Ben is missing the point here because James Carville, the Democrat activist, he pointed out that Trump was planning to hold a rally in New York's Madison Square Garden. And obviously, that's something that only a Nazi or maybe the Knicks would do. And this is James Carville amping up the hysteria, cut 3.
Trump has announced that he will be giving a speech at Madison Square Garden on October the 27th. Please Google Madison Square Garden, February the 10th, 1939, and see what happened there. They are telling you exactly what they're going to do. They're telling you we're going to institute a fascist regime.
So there was a Nazi, a Bundmail rally at Madison Square Garden back in 1939. There have been a couple of other events there, like Billy Graham and the Beatles and things like that. But never mind. By this logic, Trump is the Beatles. By that logic, I just realized Trump is the Beatles. But no, there were Nazis at Madison Square Garden, so Trump's a Nazi if he gives a speech there. Obviously, Trump wore a yarmulke and honored Jewish dead, just like Hitler did. And so that's, he's obviously a Jewish Hitler, except not Hitler because he's Jewish, so that doesn't make any sense. But that doesn't matter. As long as there's this cloud of emotion, they know that their audience, their target audience, which is mostly suburban women, is going to go along with this because it's just an emotional field. And that, that is the way women do live in these emotional fields more than men do. And not all women, obviously. I'm just saying, if you wanted to get men angry, you'd get them in an anger field. You'd wrap them up in anger and indignation, and that might topple their logic. That might topple their logic, but this is the way you do it for women. But the thing about this is, it's one thing for dishonest journalists like the people at the Atlantic Monthly and Kamala's friends like the woman who owns the Atlantic Monthly, and for fired, disgruntled employees like John Kelly, and for Democrat activists like Carville to say he's a fascist, he's a Nazi, he's all this stuff. But Kamala has done it now, and that was a big mistake in my opinion because it makes her look like she's insulting all of us. She's calling all of us fascists. She was at a CNN town hall, and she said, yes, I think he's a fascist, and then doubled down in a very disturbing way outside her residence in Washington, D.C., at a podium with the vice presidential seal. This is how she talked about Donald Trump there, 10.
It is clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascists, who in fact vowed to be a dictator on day one, and vowed to use the military as his personal militia to carry out his personal and political vendettas. Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions. Those who once tried to stop him from pursuing his worst impulses would no longer be there, and no longer be there to rein him in.
And it's really disturbing that she would say that from a vice presidential podium, comparing him to Hitler. In this point, she was quoting John Kelly to some degree, but she mixed in her own thoughts there. On CNN, she didn't quote John Kelly. She said herself that she believed he was a fascist. That really makes her unreliable and, just unhinged. It makes her unhinged because we've already had a President Trump, and where was the fascism? Where was the body? Where were the bodies? Where was the cattle calls? There was nothing like that. And in fact, he was less of an he cut regulations, which is the opposite of what fascists do. And because of this, the Los Angeles Times has not endorsed her. They're not endorsing a candidate. That was because of the owner of the LA Times. The editor actually quit over it. But today, just a couple of minutes ago, the Washington Post announced they're not going to endorse her either. That is big news. That is a real thing. They are looking at her and they are thinking, uh-oh, this was a mistake. Maybe they're thinking, I think a lot of them are thinking they'd rather have 4 years of Trump that they can run against than actually have this woman who really doesn't know what she's doing. But all of this is about this cloud of emotion, which means there's something they don't want us to see. Let's take a look at what that is. All right, one of my favorite ads. The radical left's stance on abortion has reached alarming levels, from supporting free abortions to even advocating for infanticide. We're witnessing an unprecedented assault on the sanctity of life. This isn't just politics anymore, it's a moral crisis. But there is hope. PreBorn, the nation's largest pro-life organization, is fighting back. They're strategically positioned in high abortion areas, offering a lifeline to women and their unborn children. When you join forces with PreBorn, you are protecting the greatest victims in our society, babies in their mother's womb. Over 300,000 babies have been saved through PreBorn's efforts. When a woman considers ending her pregnancy, PreBorn is there with compassion, support, and the power of ultrasound technology. This simple tool doubles a baby's chance of survival. You can be part of this crucial mission. For just $28, you can fund one ultrasound. $140 saves 5 precious lives. For those able to make a larger impact, your tax-deductible donation of $5,000 will sponsor PreBorn's entire network for 24 hours, helping rescue 200 babies. To make a difference, dial pound 250 and say baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.com/Klavan. That's preborn.com/Klavan. Stand with truth, stand for life. Dial pound 250 and say baby, or visit preborn.com/KLAVAN today. Chapter 2, Projection Much. Now, obviously, we all say this, but the Democrat Party has found it effective to accuse the Republicans of doing what the Democrats are doing. And the thing about this is that it's just growing stale. The Wall Street Journal did a candidate interview with Donald Trump. They always interview the main candidates. And they hate him there. They disdain him. They think his economic policies are terrible. They think he's, too far to the left economically and too far to the right socially and all this stuff. But they looked at him and they thought the one thing he's not is a fascist. And this, after their interview, they said most Americans simply don't believe the fascist meme, and for good reasons. The first is the evidence of Mr. Trump's first term. Mr. Trump's worst attempt at stretching executive power, reallocating military construction money to build the border wall, was small beer compared with Mr. Biden's lawless $400 billion student loan forgiveness. Fascism historically was National Socialism, government control over much of the economy. By that definition, Democrats today are the National Socialists, using regulation, mandates, law enforcement, and trillions of dollars in subsidies to coerce Americans to follow their dictates on climate and culture. Mr. Trump was a deregulator in his first term. Democrats exploited the Russia collusion narrative in 2016 until it was exposed as a lie, financed by Hillary Clinton's campaign. Democrats tried to keep Mr. Trump off the presidential ballot this year. Democrats have used the law in no fewer than 5 cases to disqualify him. Democrats are also candid in saying they want to compromise the independence of the Supreme Court with new political rules and supervision. If they get even narrow control of the Senate along with the House and White House, they say they will break the 60-vote filibuster rule to do it. Kamala Harris did the CNN town hall with Anderson Cooper playing Bret Baier. And I say that because Anderson Cooper actually asked a couple of incisive questions. He was also asking questions like, well, actually, it's not fair. That was the people in the town hall asked some kind of beauty queen questions like, what's your greatest weakness and how have you fixed it? And she couldn't answer those. It was like watching one of those dumb women, women who are not up to the intellectual standards of the beauty contest they're in, trying to fumble through a political question. However, Anderson Cooper, in the role of Bret Baier, asked about the Supreme Court. This is cut 11.
There is no question that the American people increasingly are losing confidence in the Supreme Court. And in large part because of the behavior of certain members of that court and because of certain rulings, including the Dobbs decision and taking away a precedent that had been in place for 50 years, protecting a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. So I do believe that there should be some kind of reform of the court, and we can study what that actually looks like.
Now, that was untrue. In fact, in a poll I read you a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week, I can't remember, the trust in the Supreme Court has risen since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Not because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but has risen since then because people know they're being fed a line of goods. And this attack on the Supreme Court is simply because the Democrats haven't gotten their way. And the reason people know this is because the tide, the river of information, the flow of information has been diverted by social media and other internet functions and has taken it away from them, and they haven't quite calculated how completely that has happened. She was also asked, I'm just giving you, there was all this word salad stuff that she goes into, and it just made her look stupid, but we already know she's stupid. What all was revealed was how radical she is. She was asked what she would do if she couldn't get a federal law in Congress to replace Roe v. Wade, and this is what she said to that.
Codifying Roe v. Wade, that would obviously require 60 votes in the Senate, a majority of the House. That's a big leap. We don't have that yet. If that's not possible to codify it in the House, what do you do?
I think we need to take a look at the filibuster, to be honest with you.
So if you don't get your way, you get rid of the filibuster. And the filibuster is not a law. It's just a rule of the Senate, but it keeps radicals on both sides from getting their way. It keeps it keeps one party from doing everything it wants to do. And the last time the Democrats got rid of the filibuster, they got rid of it for every form of justice appointment, federal judge appointment, except the Supreme Court. And Mitch McConnell told them they'd be sorry. And when they just thought they'd never lose again. And when the Republicans won, they took away the filibuster for the Supreme Court, and that's how we got all the Trump judges. So it's a mistake to get rid of it, but it also shows that they mean it. Now, here's the thing. I get so tired of this is the greatest election of our lifetime, and America will be gone if we lose. I think America is going to survive. I hope America is going to survive. However, that these are real alarm bells, that Kamala Harris is going on there and telling us she wants to rejigger the Supreme Court and get rid of the filibuster. Daniel Henninger, who I sometimes tease, I'm not making fun of him because I think he's an excellent columnist, but I sometimes tease the fact that he is the incarnation of the old Republican Party, the country club Republican Party. And he's a middle of the road right wing guy. But he's never panics. He's always kind of calm, and he doesn't see radicalism everywhere. But he's pointing out in his latest column, he says in 2008, Barack Obama campaigned toward the center and won 60% of the moderate vote. Mr. Obama left the moderates at the altar and governed from the left. Joe Biden ran in his 2020 presidential campaign toward the center, explicitly away from Senator Bernie Sanders' progressive politics. Mr. Biden governed further left than the Obama presidency. Kamala Harris is running yet another slide to the right election strategy, appealing to anti-Trump Republicans, but she's pretending. And Henninger says anyone harboring hopes that these campaigns suggest a return to party moderation, as more than a few lifelong Democrats might wish, needs a reality check. In recent years, and this is a really good point from Dan Henninger in the Wall Street Journal, in recent years, the two most visible moderate Senate Democrats were Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Arizona's Kyrsten Sinema. Because both supported fiscal restraint and opposed eliminating the filibuster, they became pariahs in their own party, hounded by left-wing activists. Public vilification has become the party's essential tactic for keeping members in line. In 2022, Senator Sinema changed her party registration to independent, and this year gave up. The Democrat running now to fill her Arizona seat is Progressive Representative Ruben Gallego. Much of this might be considered the expectable pitch and roll of American politics, save for the statement on voting to kill the filibuster from Senator Schumer during the August Democrat convention. Schumer said, we got it up to 48, but of course Sinema and Manchin voted no. That's why we couldn't change the rules where they are both gone. And here is how Henniger closes this column. The post-filibuster legislative game plan has been in the works for years. Mr. Obama, in a 2020 speech, said a priority with a simple majority vote would be statehood for the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. Adding 4 virtually permanent Democratic Senate seats with the wave of a filibuster-free wand would likely guarantee party control over the U.S. judiciary at every level, debt be damned, federal spending, Medicare for all, and lowering the voting age to 16. They are trying to accomplish what they have accomplished in California, a one-party state. And once you have a one-party state, they control the rules for voting. They control just about everything. And it's really, really hard to break that party's grip. And one of the things you notice, but it's so important to notice this, is that they make life worse. I lived in California for 20 years, I guess it was, maybe more. I lived in California for 20 years. Life got worse. Life always gets worse under the left. And the problem is that the old generation dies off, remembering when things are better, and people just start to play around at the edges with leftism, but they don't realize that it does not have to be this way. And that's what they're aiming for with the country, and it would be a very good thing if we stop them. This thing about Donald Trump being a fascist, I voted for Trump the first time, and I said, I think there's a 5% chance he could be Hitler, but I think otherwise he'll be fine. I was wrong about that. I actually was wrong about that, because if I thought about it, Hitler was always Hitler. He always had the same opinions. He was a psychopath. He got worse as a psychopath as the pressure came down on him. But Trump has never been that guy. He's exactly what you see. And in fact, it's time to take a look at what we do see in the next chapter. Are you tired of the same old fantasy sports grind? Well, buckle up, because PrizePicks is about to revolutionize your game day experience. PrizePicks isn't just another fantasy sports app. It's a platform that rewards your knowledge and insight. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players' performance. That's it. No complicated drafts, no season-long commitments, just you, your sports acumen, and the potential to win up to 100 times your money. And there's more. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. If a player in your lineup leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your entry stays active. It's like they're saying, we've got your back even when the unexpected happens. And for those of you who love a good deal, sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. This bonus is yours just for joining, regardless of your lineup's performance. I like to pick things that are easy to understand, like Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are going to get more yards than anybody has ever said or heard of, because they just are. I've never seen 2 more talented players, and I'm not a Baltimore Ravens fan, but they are just that good. So, are you prepared to put your sports knowledge to the test? Are you ready to challenge yourself and demonstrate your expertise? Then it's time to run your game on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code Klavan to get $50 instantly when you play 5. That's code Klavan on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play 5. PrizePicks, run your game if and only if you know how to spell Klavan for that deal. Klavan.
There are no easy things.
Chapter 3, Fries versus Lies. So meanwhile, Donald Trump pulls one of the hilarious campaign stunts of all time. And it's only hilarious because it's him, because it's a typical campaign stunt. There's nothing particularly weird or offbeat about it. This is what politicians do, right? They show up at barbecues, they show up in cowboy hats, they eat ice cream, they do all this stuff. He shows up and he works for McDonald's. And the reason this is funny is that Kamala Harris said she worked for McDonald's, and there is no record of her ever having done so. So they ask, and of course, the other thing that's funny about it is that Trump eats at McDonald's, as you can tell by looking at him. Right? He eats at McDonald's, so he actually does. So they ask him why he's doing this. This is cut 6.
I love McDonald's. I love jobs. I like to see good jobs. And I think it's inappropriate when somebody puts down all over the place that she worked at McDonald's. It was a big part of her resume that she worked at McDonald's, how tough a job it was. She specifically worked at the French fry, where they make the French fries, and she talked about the heat. It was so tough. She never worked at McDonald's. McDonald's just confirmed that again, by the way. She never worked at McDonald's. In other words, she's lying Kamala.
So here's the thing about this, though. The only reason this went crazy, went viral on the news and on social media, is, first of all, he looks hilarious with the red tie and the apron. And he goes in and he learns how to make McDonald's fries, which, of course, is the best thing about McDonald's. And he's so comfortable with the people there who are all regular people working at McDonald's, and they're all colors, and they're all, come from different places. And they're so comfortable with him. The guy showing him how to make fries is talking to the former president of the United States and maybe the future president of the United States, and he's just telling them how to make fries. You could never do that with Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris could never do it with them. It is just his ease with ordinary people and with being in that place where he actually eats. And remember, he ordered it. He had a big White House dinner, and he ordered the fries for that. He ordered McDonald's for that. Then he goes out to the window, and of course, hundreds of people show up because they want to get McDonald's from Donald Trump. And they show up, and here he is serving a meal at the window.
You guys are a good-looking group. Hello, everybody. This is not a normal situation, is it? What a good-looking family. How did you produce those good-looking kids? Oh, they look like the one. They look like the one. How are you? Nice to see you. That's all right. Thank you.
Right. We appreciate all the this order right here.
Thank you.
We'll have you in Bucks County.
And there'll be no charge. Trump is paying for it. Is that okay?
$20.44.
Yes. Oh, you ordered some extra stuff.
Oh, okay, great.
This is all on Trump.
Oh, hold on.
I'm allowed to do that, right?
Yeah. Let's check and make sure it's everything you said it would be.
It's better be. It's going to be the best yet. I made it myself.
I made it myself. And he turns around. I thought we had this on there. He turns around and he says, I like this job. I could come back and do this again. It was just, it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. And the thing about it is that I think the thing about Trump is there is a part of him that's just a regular guy with $1 billion. I think there is a real part of him that is like this. And it just came off as authentic in a way that I don't think other politicians could have pulled off. And that drove, so let's just take a look at what he did. Typical campaign stop that he handled very well. He was very lovable and adorable and all this stuff. Let's take a look at how they reacted. New York Times, Kamala Harris and McDonald's, a college job and a Trump attack. Donald Trump is claimed without evidence because Donald Trump needs evidence, but Atlantic Monthly, no, they don't need evidence. Donald Trump has claimed without evidence that Ms. Harris never worked at the fast food chain. Her campaign and a friend say she did. They found one friend who remembered being told that she had eaten at McDonald's, and her campaign says so, and that debunks this, right? It's birtherism. Remember when Donald Trump said that Obama hadn't been born in the United States or questioned whether he'd been born in the United States? That was birtherism. This is birtherism meets burgerism. But they can't find any records of it either. In fact, McDonald's put out a corporate letter. I love their corporate letter. It said, McDonald's does not endorse candidates. We're not red or blue. We're golden. Though we are not a political brand, we've been proud to hear former President Trump's love for McDonald's and Vice President Harris's fond memories working under the arches, while we and our franchises don't have records for all positions dating back to the early 80s. What makes 1 in 8 so powerful is the shared experience so many Americans have had. 1 in 8 people have worked at McDonald's. And, that's very interesting because I think a lot of people who are in the higher strata have never met anybody who worked at McDonald's. I remember people working at McDonald's when it first opened when I was a kid, friends of mine, but after a while, you stop knowing people. If you've risen through the ranks, you stop knowing people who've worked at McDonald's. And so this is an actual real thing. Now, what happens next? Democrat senators, just just try to fathom the pettiness and humorlessness of this. Democrat senators led by Elizabeth Warren, Ron Wyden, and Robert Casey Jr. send a threatening letter to McDonald's. We write with concern regarding increases in fast food prices over the last several years and seeking information regarding McDonald's pricing decisions. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? They're bullying McDonald's, which employs 1 in 8 of the people which has employed 1 in 8 of the people in the country. While McDonald's is not the only fast food restaurant that has increased prices significantly in recent years, its dominant market position as the largest fast food chain in the United States has an outsized impact on American consumers. Unbelievable. And then suddenly the press has a report of E. coli caused by onions on a Big Mac. 1 person has died and 49 people have become ill following an E. coli outbreak linked to McDonald's Quarter Pounder hamburgers, which is not true. Oh, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, they found out about this E. coli, a month ago, that suddenly it came out. This is what they've got for this is what they have for an October surprise. And they're bullying McDonald's. I mean, what kind of thugs are these? You know, it always got me, I know this is a little stupid thing, but it always got me that Melania Trump, when she was first lady, was never on the cover of a magazine. I mean, she's a very beautiful woman, and she was the first lady of America. She'd been elected, and not one fashion magazine would put her on the cover where they put on these glamour shots of Kamala Harris, these glamour shots of Jill Biden. And I don't mind them putting on the glamour shots of Joe Biden on magazines, but I mind because they're so petty. Everything they've done has failed. Everything they touch makes life worse in America. Everything they touch makes life worse in our cities. If black people continue to vote for the Democrats, all I can say is I don't get it. I do not get it, because they live in the cities that Democrats have ruined. Surely at some point they notice that they're not getting what they're voting for. Surely at some point blacks start to say, you know what? This is ridiculous. We did better under Trump. But the pettiness, the way they cling to power, instead of saying, you know what, we're going to change our policies. Even Jimmy Carter changed his policies, but they will not do it. Obama will not do it. Biden wouldn't do it. And Kamala Harris sure as hell's not going to do it. What is it they think they've got hold of that is so good, so worthy, that it's worth destroying the Supreme Court for, that it's worth destroying the filibuster for, that it's worth rewriting? They want to have the federal government rewrite the electoral laws. They want illegals to vote. What is it they think they've got that is worth defending to that extent? It was worth destroying the country to defend. You would think at some point they would say, well, we want to make people's life worse. I don't know. What is it wrong with this Constitution that it stops us from making people worse? So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a guy who goes out and can work at McDonald's. I've always said one of my favorite moments of the Trump presidency was that time a Marine's hat blew off, the honor guard's hat blew off, and he chased it down without thinking, because that is who he is to some degree. He's a guy who thinks he's just like any other guy, except richer and more powerful and amazing because he's Donald Trump. They kept saying this is a vibes election. It's not a policy election. I think it is a policy election. I think they don't understand how much people now understand about policy that they didn't understand when they were just listening to the lies on ABC, CBS, and NBC. I think they're getting more off X than they were ever getting before. But if it's a vibes election, Trump is winning that too. Have I mentioned my new book, A Woman Underground, officially launched last week? For some of you stragglers, you may not have read the rest of the Cameron Winter series. You're in luck. The DailyWire shop now has a bundle of all 4 of my Cameron Winter novels. There's even an exclusive autograph version that makes the perfect gift. Do not miss out on this bundle, only available at the DailyWire. Go to dailywire.com/shop today. Final chapter, Why We Fight What We Fight. One of the things that I think we lose track of is we separate into these parties, and the press works overtime trying to simplify all the issues into yes or no and make us all stupid by making us forget who we are, where we came from, what the history shows, and what it shows in other countries and in history. This is why I think culture is so important. And when I say culture, I mean, like, did I tell you my book, A Woman Underground? But like novels that bring you back into the past, that show you what people were like back then, movies that kind of capture the essence of the moment and all this. And I want to talk about a side story that's going on. I know we want to talk about the election, but this is about the election in a roundabout way. In New York, where Daniel Penny, you probably remember him, a 25-year-old former Marine, is charged with second-degree manslaughter and negligent homicide in the death of 30-year-old Jordan Neely on a New York subway. Now, you probably remember this case, that Neely was a homeless guy who had been listed as one of the people in New York who needed the most help but wouldn't get it. He came on and gave this threatening rant saying he was fed up and he was ready to go to jail and someone is going to die today. He's in a subway car screaming at people, close up, women, children. He's terrifying people. And Penny, Neely is white. Neely is black. Penny is white. And Penny put Neely in a chokehold and restrained him for 5 to 6 minutes. And the chokehold, according to the medical examiner, caused Neely's death, okay? Now, Alvin Bragg, who we remember from his crap prosecution of Donald Trump, that thing that I kept hammering away at and nobody wanted to talk about it. And I kept saying, this is important because he's being accused. Nobody knows what he's being accused of, and now nobody knows what he's been convicted of, right? So the same district attorney, the Soros-backed district attorney, Bill McGurn pointed this out, the great William McGurn in the Wall Street Journal. He pointed out that there's this thing, prosecutorial discretion, and Alvin Bragg could have decided not to prosecute this or to prosecute it at a lesser charge or a misdemeanor, but Bragg doesn't want to take on the progressives. I think that's what McGurn says. He says Bragg doesn't have the stomach for the progressive blowback, but I think Bragg likes this stuff. I think he wants to prosecute this guy. Remember that reading from McGurn's column, Black Lives Matter tweeted that Mr. Penny's actions constituted vigilante justice. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called Neely's death a public murder. New York Democrat State Senator Julie Salazar said it was a lynching. So he's now facing 5 to 15 years on a manslaughter charge, which was obviously brought on by his being a good Samaritan. Maybe a slap on the wrist for being careless. I don't know. I mean, I can't tell whether he thought he was struggling with the guy or not, but surely a man who comes to the aid of people in an increasingly crime-ridden city, increasingly littered with disturbed people who are living on the streets when they should be put in places where they can be taken care of. Surely what Penny did was an act of good Samaritanism and should be praised. Now, here's why I bring this up. When I lived in the UK, since I was talking before about living in London, I noticed that they had very strict laws keeping people from defending themselves. Even if someone broke into your home and you got in a fight with them and killed them, you could be prosecuted. And they always said, we're not a cowboy American society. Whenever these things came up, they made it very, very hard to defend yourself, okay? And I used to think, why would you do that? If somebody breaks into your home, you should be allowed to on site. If he breaks into your home, you should at least be able to confront him with a gun and say, if you don't go, I will. I mean, that is a threat. To break into someone's home is the most threatening thing that you can do to him, right? So why is this? And now as I look at what's happening in British society, it's collapsing. The Free State is collapsing. I begin to understand it, all right? Now you can be arrested for praying silently in Great Britain. You can be arrested for praying silently within a zone of an abortion clinic. This is, the Free Press wrote about this, about a woman named Emma who has strong feelings about abortion and is now receiving letters from the Scottish government saying, "Dear resident," alerting her that her home, due to its proximity in the hospital, is now in an abortion censorship zone. So now they have the safe access law, which means it is a criminal offense to do anything within 200 meters of an abortion facility that could influence someone's decision to access, provide, or facilitate an abortion. That includes activities in a private place, such as a house within the area, could be an offense if they can be seen or heard within the zone and are done intentionally or recklessly. You can report a group or an individual that you think is breaking the law. So that means you could be fined £10,000, which is over $13,000, if somebody sees you through the window of your house on your knees praying and suspects you of praying against abortion. So what's the connection between the UK's reluctance to let people defend themselves and the collapse of their society into an that's oppressive. That's oppression. That's tyranny. There's no, there's no softening that term. That's tyranny to do something like that to somebody. What's the connection between not letting people defend themselves and tyranny? So there's a play called a trilogy of plays called the Oresteia. It's an ancient Greek play written by Aeschylus in the 5th century BC. And it is a foundational play of Western culture. And it's a 3-part story that it casts back to something that happened in the past, which is the sacrifice of a woman named Iphigenia, who's the daughter of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, who was sacrificed to get a fair wind to go off to fight the Trojans in Troy. Now, Clytemnestra is bitter about the sacrifice of her daughter, as you might think, and she has a lover named Aegisthus, and she plots with Aegisthus to murder Agamemnon, her husband, when he returns, and she does. And now Orestes, the son of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon, comes back and murders his mother and her lover Aegisthus, all right? So in other words, this chain of vengeance is set up where each person is honor-bound to kill the person who killed your parent. But for Orestes, it causes a problem because to kill the person who killed his father, he has to kill his mother. So he's violated one taboo in carrying out something else. And so the Furies, which are the people who come and get you when you've done something bad, when you've broken the laws of Greece, they come after Orestes and he escapes from them. The Furies are eating away at him and he escapes from them and he has a trial overseen by Athena, the goddess of wisdom and the founder of Athens. And they decide that the government is now going to try people, and the Furies will no longer come and devour them, and the Furies are consigned to be underground, so they sort of become like the conscience of the country. But in other words, to stop the endless chain of vengeance, of personal vengeance, you cede the power of justice to the government. That is the original deal. Now, there's a famous philosopher named René Girard, a Catholic philosopher who stood against the postmoderns, and he says this is the central pattern of societies, that people envy the things that each other have, they try to get each other, this tension grows up, and once they start killing each other, they commit revenge murders forever and ever until the government comes along and lifts that function from them and says, we will deliver justice. It's no longer revenge. Once it's been lifted from the personal, it now becomes justice. And René Girard thought that this was such a central aspect of human society that he thought one of the roles of Jesus was to expose it, because what happens ultimately is the tension in the society is cast off by killing an innocent scapegoat. And the message of the gospel story is, no, the scapegoat is innocent, is innocent. You shouldn't kill him for it. The problem is people's envy of what each other has and the fact that they want to take what you have away from you. So if you have something that you value, they want it because you value it, you want to hold on to it. The tension between you grows, one of you kills the other, and you have generational vengeance until the government takes that power away. So if you think about this for a minute, the power that the government has originally comes from the individual who has been wronged. It doesn't come from the criminal. It comes from the individual who has been wronged. I've been wronged, and therefore I feel that I have the right to take vengeance on you. But because I don't want to have endless vengeance that will destroy the society, I cede my power to the government. So the person who killed my mother isn't the person the power is coming from. They're taking the power from me because I have the power to kill that person for revenge, but the government is taking the power from me, that power of revenge. And that's where the power of government comes from. We cede to government power because we need them to bring order and do justice, because if we do it ourselves, it will never end. If you kill X and I kill you and you kill me and X kills you, and that's going to go on forever. And Girard talks about how this is a great threat to society. So we cede the power of vengeance to the government, and instead of vengeance, it becomes a trial. And that's the story of the Oresteia. That's the philosophy of René Girard. That's what René Girard said Jesus had come to stop, a pattern he wanted to stop. That's how central it is to our society. When the government wants more power, as it always will eventually because it is populated by people who want power, they go back to the source of the power, not the criminal, the victim. The victim has ceded his power of vengeance to the government. And so when they want more power, they go back to you and they say, you cannot defend yourself, even in your own home, even if a crazy man who has already punched a woman who's committed all kinds of crimes, Neely had committed all kinds of crimes, even he punched a woman so hard he broke the bone around her eyeball. Even if it's that man threatening to kill people in a subway car and you put a chokehold on him, you kill him, you have done the wrong thing because that power belongs to the government. We took it from you long ago and now we want all of it. And so what you're watching, when they want to take our guns away and we come up with, no, we need our guns because we're hunters or all this stuff. No, that's not what it is. We have given the government just enough power to keep order and bring justice. But they don't get all the power because this is a bottom-up society. That's why we hold on to our guns, even though the ladies get all a flutter about it, and some of the ladies are men. That's why we keep the power to defend ourselves. That's why we think that it is all right. That's why conservatives say if you break into homes, those people in those homes, in Florida, for instance, they have a right to defend themselves and you down. We say it because we believe in the freedom of the individual, and all these little things are not little things. Giving up the filibuster, taking away the Supreme Court, taking away the states' rights to form their own electoral laws. All of those things preserve the individual freedoms because once they're gone, you never get them back. And that's what we're fighting over. We are not fighting over how Donald Trump talks. We're not fighting over how he thinks about women. We're not fighting over whether he's a fascist or not, because that's absurd. We're fighting over the power to be free as individuals, which is what this country is. And once it's gone, it is gone for good. Mark your calendars for Monday because it only comes once a week, and that's when Am I Racist, the #1 documentary of the decade, is finally streaming exclusively on DailyWire Plus. This isn't just the hit comedy that crushed it at the box office. Oh no, there's more. You will also get access to what we didn't show you in theaters. We had to save some surprises for our members, and exclusive bonus episodes where Matt Walsh breaks down how he pulled off the greatest troll in history against the left. Monday is the day, but here's the deal. You need to be a Daily Wire Plus member to watch it, so if you haven't joined yet, now's the time. Go to Daily Wire Plus, sign up and use code DEI for 35% off a new annual membership. Don't miss the movie, the bonus scenes, and the inside scoop from Matt Walsh himself. Join Daily Wire Plus today and be the first to stream Am I Racist this Monday. Again, that's Monday, only on Daily Wire Plus. Get in now and be one of the first to laugh at home with the #1 documentary of the decade. Klavan Klapbacks.
And just because Donald Trump's not a Nazi doesn't mean there's not an echo of history here.
Why is she still talking?
I can't believe Brian Stelter is back. I cannot believe they brought that clown back. All right, from Holly, I have to thank you for your encouragement and support of femininity and motherhood. Our children are 6, 5, 2, and 10 months old. God bless you. If I were lucky enough to receive another response from you, she said that she had asked for my advice once before, and my advice was very helpful to her. And she says, if I were lucky enough to receive another response, I would ask if you had any advice on what unique educational opportunities one might provide their homeschooled children so that they have an appreciation for and understanding of our Western values. However, seen as you are busy saving our civilization from the clutches of the godless, baby-hating, demonically possessed left too far, I would understand if my little question falls by the wayside. I needed to say thank you. Now, the reason I read this is not because it's so kind. It is kind. Thank you, Holly, for saying this. But I just wanted to get to that thing about this. I thank you for your encouragement and support of femininity and motherhood, because both at the book event that Spencer and I did in Franklin and the one I did at the Mysterious Bookshop in Manhattan, several women, I mean, a sizable number of women, many of them pregnant, came up to me and thanked me for my support of femininity and motherhood. And every time they did it, I felt embarrassed. And I told them so. I said, I'm embarrassed because it's so obvious. It is so obvious that the most important job of any person is motherhood and homemaking. And femininity is obviously the great grace of human life. It is the great gift of human life. And I'm glad that it's encouraging to people that I say this, to feminine women who are making homes, who are doing that all-important task of making homes and making human beings into human beings. But it's so obvious that it's literally as if I'm saying 2 + 2 = 4, and they're coming up to me and saying, thank you so much for saying that. I'm just a little bit embarrassed to be thanked for something that is right in front of everybody. Everybody knows it about their own mother. Everybody knows it about their own mother, but nobody will say it. It's always, you're just a mother. It's just, she's just a mother. I'm just a mother. I hear this all the time. And to me, the entire, and this thing like, oh, we have to support mothers by having more childcare. No, we have to support mothers by having more husbands, and more husbands who can support the women who are building their homes for them and raising their children. It's insane. The question was, how can I teach an appreciation to my homeschooled children of Western values? You know, the basic books. You know, I talked about the Oresteia, Shakespeare, the Bible. These things are not beyond the grasp of older children. And it is not beyond the grasp of older children to teach them how the government works and why it works that way and what the founders were thinking. These are simple things that really can be communicated. They were communicated to me as a kid, and I wasn't a very good student, but I got them, I understood them, and they can be communicated to your children as well. From Michael, I'd like your opinion as I reevaluate my career path. You talk about from time to time that it's common to sacrifice one's soul in exchange for career advancement. I'm afraid I've sold my soul, or at least my heart, and I'm trying to decide whether I should bother trying to get it back. In 2021, my company mandated COVID shots for all employees. I was in a complicated financial situation that necessitated keeping my job or else going broke and losing my house. I'm a husband and father, and I was my family's only income. I took the shots, and I developed a temporarily debilitating cardiac injury. Things are better now, but I feel I sold my soul, and even though it's a good job, I'm considering whether I'd be a better example to my wife and kids if I left my employer. Laughing along with you, Michael. No, I don't think you sold your soul. I think you sell your soul when you turn from your telos to do something that degrades you. Your telos is supporting your children and your family and building their lives. And so you did what you had to do in that situation. It was wrong that they asked you to do it. You might have taken a stand against it. That would have been a heroic thing to do, but you didn't sell your soul by not doing it. You stood up for another heroic goal, which is the goal of making sure your kids have a family, have support and a mom and a home and all of those things. You did something, you could have gone above and beyond and made your family a sacrifice. But what you did was not immoral in and of itself. And it's what fathers do. Fathers do eat all kinds of crap for their families, never tell their wives and children about it. And that's the way that being a father is. You didn't do the wrong thing, and you should keep the job if it's the job you want. Become a member, because we're about to go into member block, which means the rest of you who are not members are going into Klavanless block. And Klavanless block is a dark, dark place that goes on forever. It is eternal. It is not just a block. It is a vast, vast expanse. So go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. If you are already a member, come with me, my friends, to member block.